My name is Grace Miller, and for 23 years, I believed in marriage the way children believe in fairy tales. I believed love was a shelter, a stronghold against the storms of life, that it would remain even when winds howled and rain pelted the windows. I believed if I stood by someone long enough, they would stand by me too. That belief shattered one gray winter morning in Pennsylvania when I realized my husband had left me long before he walked out the door. Daniel and I had built a life that seemed solid from the outside. Our home was neat, every corner carefully arranged, every rug and pillow in place. Our routines were predictable, our laughter quiet but constant. We had inside jokes, Sunday dinners with friends and family, and a silent understanding that surviving together made us indestructible, or so I thought. That was the lie I lived without realizing it. The change began slowly, imperceptibly at first. He stopped asking questions about my day. He stopped touching my hand in public. He stopped looking at me like I was someone he had chosen, like he still wanted me. Every conversation grew shorter, thinner, emptier. I told myself this was what long marriages became, that love matured into silence. I was wrong. He began guarding his phone like it contained the very breath of life. If I entered the room, he tilted the screen away. When I asked who he was texting, he laughed and called me paranoid. Paranoid, emotional, insecure. Those words followed me everywhere, like invisible chains tightening around my chest. The nights were the worst. I would lie awake, listening to the quiet hum of the heater, the occasional car passing outside, and the sound of my own shallow breathing. I began noticing little things. The way he avoided eye contact, the way he smiled at his phone in secret, the way he seemed to shrink from me even in the same room. I told myself it was me, that I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew the truth before it became undeniable. One night, he didn't come home. No call, no message, no explanation. I sat on the couch, watching headlights pass the window, each one a dagger twisting into my chest. By morning, I knew something had snapped beyond repair. When a knock came that afternoon, I expected him. I got her. She stood there, confident, calm, unhesitant, radiating certainty like armor. "I'm Daniel's partner," she said. "He said you'd already know." That sentence erased years of my life in one smooth stroke. I felt my knees weaken. The room swayed around me. Everything I had known, everything I had believed in, seemed to dissolve in that instant. Within weeks, my world collapsed with brutal efficiency. Daniel emptied our accounts. He hired lawyers who spoke in cold, professional tones, who framed me as unstable, difficult, unreasonable. He rewrote our history while I struggled to comprehend how it all ended. Friends disappeared, some avoided my calls. Others offered sympathy without action. No one wanted to get involved when comfort was at risk. I packed 2 bags. That was all I could carry from 23 years of life. Homelessness does not arrive dramatically. It creeps in quietly. First couches, then cars, then nowhere at all. Pennsylvania winters are unforgiving. I slept under bridges, listening to traffic thunder above me like proof that life continued without pause. The bitter wind cut through every layer of clothing I had. Hunger became normal. Dignity became optional. I learned which churches served meals and which storefronts stayed warm late. I avoided mirrors because the woman staring back looked hollow and unfamiliar. At night, I talked to God as if he had stopped answering. "What did I do wrong?" I whispered into the dark. "Why did you let him destroy me?" The silence felt heavy. I carried my grandmother's Bible in my bag, but opening it felt pointless. Faith seemed designed for people with homes and certainty, not someone shivering on a park bench, clawing at survival. One night, my body finally gave out. I collapsed, shivering from cold and exhaustion. My mind replayed every ignored warning, every moment I trusted when I should have questioned. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. That's when the dream came. I stood in a wide open field, bathed in light, surrounded by a warmth that was impossible to describe. There was no cold, no hunger, no fear. The air felt alive, like it had been breathing with me all along. And then I saw him, not glowing, not distant, just real. Jesus Christ sat beside me, serene, waiting as though he had never left. He said my name softly, Grace. I broke. I told him everything, the betrayal, the shame, the loneliness. He listened without interruption, without judgment. You were never abandoned, he said. You were redirected. When I woke, tears streaked my face, but something inside felt steady for the first time in months. The cold felt weaker. My heart felt held. I didn't know how, but I knew my story was not finished. That morning, the world looked the same, but I did not. I walked that day without knowing where I was going. For the first time since everything collapsed, I was not running. I was simply moving. Faith did not return like a sudden miracle. It crept in carefully, like a cautious visitor, unsure if it would be welcomed. Some days, all I could say was, stay. My stomach still gnawed with hunger, reminding me that belief alone could not feed a body. Every night, I curled under a thin blanket on a park bench or in the doorway of a closed shop, wishing I could disappear entirely, wishing the world would forget me. And yet, in the small hours, I whispered prayers, not sure if God could hear or even if he cared. A woman named Ruth found me one morning. She was a volunteer at a local soup kitchen. She handed me a cup of coffee and smiled warmly. "You look cold," she said, as simple as a sunrise. That small recognition, that moment of acknowledgement, felt heavier than warmth. No pity, no judgment, just acknowledgement. I began returning to the church, not because I trusted God yet, but because I trusted the kindness of strangers. The church became a fragile lifeline. I volunteered whenever I could, cleaning tables, sorting clothes, washing dishes, simple tasks, but purpose is powerful when everything else has been stripped away. And in these moments, I began to see humanity again. Not the polished, superficial humanity of my old life, but raw, honest humanity. Men and women with stories sharper than mine, stories of addiction, abuse, loss, war. People who had been broken and yet who came back to help others despite their pain. At night, I began reading my grandmother's Bible again, not for answers, but for company. Its words felt different now. They did not judge. They sat beside me. They whispered in the dark that someone was still listening. The dreams returned, though not every night. And when Jesus appeared, he did not promise rescue. He promised presence. Pain does not mean punishment, he told me in one of the dreams. It means something is being formed. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. My life felt shattered, a puzzle thrown from the highest shelf. But as I listened to the stories of others, I began to see the threads forming. The women in the shelter taught me resilience. The men who had survived addiction taught me patience. The children who had been abandoned taught me empathy. Healing was not loud. It was slow. It was learning to breathe again after nearly drowning. One afternoon, I walked past the courthouse. Daniel was there, polished and confident, smiling awkwardly when he saw me. "I didn't think I'd see you like this," he said. I waited for anger, for rage, for a tidal wave of emotions. It never came. Instead, I felt a strange clarity. "I forgive you," I said quietly. The words surprised both of us. Forgiveness did not excuse him, it released me. I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Weeks later, a shelter coordinator offered me a room, a real door, a real bed. That night, I cried alone, overwhelmed by safety. For the first time in months, I felt secure enough to let my body relax, to let my tears fall freely without shame. The church offered me part-time work, answering phones, sorting donations, helping at meal lines, simple, small acts that felt monumental in my fragile state. I began praying out loud again, not begging, not bargaining, just speaking to God as if he could hear me without interruption. One night, the dream returned. Jesus stood farther away this time, smiling, a calm presence in a vast field. "You are learning to stand," he said. I woke with a strange sense of hope. For the first time in months, I realized I could survive. Not just survive, but live.
My first morning in the small room offered by the shelter felt unreal. The ceiling was low, the walls plain, but the door locked and the heater worked. For the first time in a long while, I slept without fear. The silence felt earned, not empty, not threatening. Earned. Every morning, I walked outside. I breathed the cold air. I remembered the nights spent under bridges and the tunnels where the wind bit my cheeks. And I realized that each step forward, however small, was a victory. I began to notice the beauty of small things: sunlight on snow, the smell of fresh coffee, the warmth of a blanket. Simple, ordinary moments became miracles. Recovery did not arrive all at once. It was a slow, deliberate process, a careful unwrapping of each layer of pain I had carried for so long. I spent hours at the church, performing small tasks that once would have seemed insignificant, sorting coats by size and season, answering phones, organizing canned goods. Yet each simple act felt monumental. Each phone call answered, each coat hung neatly on a rack, reminded me that I mattered, even if only to the smallest degree. I began noticing people's stories, listening instead of judging. The woman who slept in her car for months, the man who had been abandoned by his family, the young mother learning to live without her partner. I did not compare pain, I honored it. Every story reminded me that survival did not mean perfection, and healing did not mean erasing the past. It meant carrying it differently, walking with it rather than running from it. The dreams continued, but their nature changed. Jesus no longer sat beside me in the field. Instead, he walked ahead, sometimes silent, sometimes speaking just a word or two. The presence felt like permission to live, to hope, to step into the world without fear. I realized that I had begun to stand on my own, that the broken pieces of my life were beginning to form something new, something stronger.
I started helping women who reminded me of myself. They came in broken and guarded, eyes sharp from disappointment. I never rushed them, never preached. I simply listened. One woman shared that her husband had vanished overnight, leaving her with nothing but questions and fear. Another told me about sleeping in her car for 6 months, afraid to ask for help. Each story resonated like an echo of my own past, and each time I listened, I felt a little more whole. The act of helping became a mirror for my own recovery. When I held a coat for someone shivering in the cold, I remembered the nights I had spent under bridges. When I offered a cup of coffee or a sandwich, I recalled the small moments of recognition that Ruth had given me. Each act of kindness, each smile, each acknowledgement of another's humanity reinforced my own sense of purpose. Forgiveness became a turning point. One afternoon, I passed the courthouse again. The building no longer frightened me. I stood across the street, observing its cold gray walls and polished steps, and I realized something profound. The place that had finalized my loss no longer owned my peace. Daniel never contacted me again, and I stopped waiting for closure from someone who could not give it. For the first time, I understood forgiveness as freedom rather than kindness. The word freedom felt heavy in my chest, yet light at the same time, like the air after a storm has passed. Faith grew quietly and steadily. It was not loud, dramatic, or miraculous in the way I had imagined. Instead, it lived in small moments, shared meals, open doors, honest conversations. It lived in the presence of others, in the laughter of children, in the gentle acknowledgement of strangers. I prayed out loud more often, but these prayers were not desperate cries. They were conversations, small and steady, a dialogue that slowly restored my connection to God. I began to take small steps toward independence. The shelter offered me part-time work, which allowed me to save enough for a modest apartment. The first time I walked into the small, freshly painted unit, I could hardly believe it was mine. The smell of paint mixed with sunlight streaming through the windows. I bought mismatched furniture from thrift stores, delighting in every wobble, every imperfection, because I realized perfection was never the goal.
Each morning I woke in that apartment, I felt a quiet sense of security I had not known in months. I made coffee with hands that still shook occasionally, watching steam rise like a prayer. It was not the life I had once had, but it was a life worth living. It was mine, and that mattered. At night, the dreams returned again, this time closer to the anniversary of my collapse. I stood in the field, bathed in warm light, alone, and then I heard his voice behind me. "You walked," Jesus said. I turned to see him smiling, radiating peace. "I did not leave you," he continued. "I taught you how to walk without fear." The words sank deep into my bones. I realized that I had been walking all along, even when I thought I was only surviving. Each step, each act of faith, each moment of kindness had brought me closer to this understanding. I had not been abandoned. I had been redirected, shaped, and strengthened. I continued to work at the church, helping others with the same quiet care I had been shown. Men and women came to me with stories of pain, fear, and survival. I listened. I guided. I offered what little wisdom I had gained through suffering. It was not always easy. Some days were heavy with grief, memories of the streets pressing in like a cold fog. But slowly, the act of giving helped me reclaim my own spirit. Every small victory mattered. Every smile returned to a woman I helped. Every meal served to a child who had gone hungry. Every act of listening became a building block in the foundation of my new life. And slowly, steadily, I began to believe that perhaps I had been given this second chance not merely to survive, but to transform, to rise stronger, and to carry others with me. Months passed, and with each day, I felt the weight of the past slowly shift from my shoulders. My apartment, small and modest, smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The mismatched furniture reminded me that imperfection could be beautiful. Every wobble, every uneven surface was a quiet testament to resilience. I began decorating with small touches, a plant in the windowsill, a stack of books beside the bed, a hand-sewn pillow I had bought from a thrift store. Each item, each decision was a claim on my own life, a small act of defiance against the years of loss and abandonment. I kept working at the church, answering phones, sorting donations, and helping wherever needed. But I also started to notice subtle changes within myself. I no longer flinched at the sound of a door slamming. I no longer counted the hours in fear of what might come next. I could sit quietly and simply be present. The simple tasks, cleaning tables, organizing clothes, handing out meals, felt monumental now, not because of their complexity, but because of what they represented: stability, purpose, and a return to life. One day, I noticed a young woman at the church, her eyes wide with fear, her hands shaking as she clutched a blanket around her shoulders. I approached her slowly, offering a gentle smile. I asked her, "Do you want some coffee?" She nodded hesitantly. That moment, small, simple, was everything. I realized that the same kindness Ruth had shown me months ago could now flow through me. I was no longer only a survivor. I was a guide, a witness, a living testament that faith and perseverance could restore someone broken. Faith had become quiet, steady, and unshakable. It did not demand miracles. It did not insist on dramatic change. Instead, it existed in small moments: the warmth of a blanket, the recognition in someone's eyes, the rhythm of a day spent purposefully. I prayed out loud now, not for rescue or for answers, but in conversation, in gratitude, in reflection. The prayers were simple, repetitive, and profoundly grounding. The dreams continued, though, differently. On one night, near the anniversary of my collapse, I stood in the field again. This time, I was alone, yet the warmth remained. A gentle breeze brushed my face, carrying a sense of peace I had never known. I heard his voice behind me. "You walked," Jesus said. I turned to see him smiling, radiating peace. "I did not leave you," he continued. I taught you how to walk without fear." The words sank deep into my bones. I realized that I had been walking all along, even when I thought I was only surviving. Every step, each act of faith, every moment of kindness had brought me closer to this understanding. I had not been abandoned. I had been redirected, shaped, and strengthened. I continued to work at the church, helping others with the same quiet care I had been shown. Men and women came to me with stories of pain, fear, and survival. I listened, I guided, I offered what little wisdom I had gained through suffering. It was not always easy. Some days were heavy with grief, memories of the streets pressing in like a cold fog. But slowly, the act of giving helped me reclaim my own spirit. Every small victory mattered. Every smile returned to a woman I helped. Every meal served to a child who had gone hungry. Every act of listening became a building block in the foundation of my new life. And slowly, steadily, I began to believe that perhaps I had been given this second chance not merely to survive, but to transform, to rise stronger, and to carry others with me.